All right, I've had a few people that I have coached over the last year or so talk about their arm placement and how they can get their arm to be higher up. So we watch a lot of the professionals throw, especially like Paul McBeth, Kristen Lott. You can see that their arm ends up being much higher, especially during the power pocket, than most players, most casual players. And so in this video of a guy that I've been coaching, Glenn, you can see that his form is starting to look okay. His arm, he feels, is a bit low on his body. And he's not alone in this. I felt this as well. And as I personally worked through this, how can we get it higher? It became obvious that it had to be a structural solution, because as you go to throw, your arm naturally wants to drop lower in this position. So structurally, how is it kept up higher during the throw? And there are two positions that our shoulder can be in that is very important for this placement of our arm during the throw. So this is the free position that our shoulder can be in. And in this free position, it can just move around freely. Okay, there's nothing really keeping it in place besides our muscles holding it in place there. And as you go to throw, this will cause our arm typically to collapse against our body or to drop. And we might hold it up high at first, but then as we go to throw, it drops, and you end up swooping with the throw. And so is there another position? Yes, there is. And we can get into that position manually, but it's also easy for people to get into that position during the throw. So manually, how do we get into that position? Okay, first, we externally rotate our shoulder back like this, and then we elevate our arm towards our head, bringing our elbow down across the center of our body in this position right here. Okay, this puts it in a different position, and in this position, the arm is locked. I call this the locked position because I can't move my arm any more than this much in this position. Okay, take it off, okay, and then put it back on into that position right there. Okay, so that arm is stuck structurally in this position. So when you go to throw, you can't lower the arm. All right, so how do we do this? How do we get it into this position? You could manually put it into that position, doing what I just showed you, okay? And you could just throw in that position. But then how do people do it? And you notice a couple of people who look different when they throw. For example, it should be pretty obvious to watch Matty O throw and notice that his arm is really high, more during his entire run-up than others. And so he gets into that position a little bit earlier, actually, in his run-up than others. And others more naturally or organically get into this position. And this is what it looks like when you get into the position during the throw. Okay, so as you go to throw, again, it's external rotation followed by elevation of the arm. All right, and so in the throw, when you go to throw, there's going to be contraction of the back. And as you contract the back, you'll notice that the shoulder naturally rotates, externally rotates, as you contract that back. Okay, so it's going back right there. And then when you watch people, I love watching Ricky Wysocki, and he contracts his back. And then as the left arm comes down, you'll see it raises, it elevates that shoulder up towards the head in the same way of doing it manually, okay? External rotation, elevation. So here, external rotation, elevation, okay? It ends up being the same thing and puts you in that same position, that locked position that you can't get out of. And that holds you in that place structurally. And this gives you a pretty automatic power pocket. Whereas if you're trying to do it In the free position, you go back and then forward. There's nothing really keeping your arm in that position. So if you're trying to do the power pocket in the free position, you're just going to end up being extremely frustrated, and you're not going to be able to get it because you need a structural solution for this issue. So again, that external rotation, elevation of the arm or the shoulder as the left arm comes in gives you that structural stability that keeps your arm up higher. And the timing of this is, here's the thing that's a bit different. I'm going to get into this in another video on what's going on with the arms, especially the off arm. For most people, when they go to throw, their arms are going back together and then forward together. Okay, that's not going to allow you to be able to do this, to get your shoulder into the locked position. Okay, because this arm has to be coming down in order to help raise this shoulder up. All right, so if they're going back together, forward together, you're not going to be able to get in that position. And so in order to do that, the timing of this arm is going to have to be different. This arm is going to have to be coming back while you still have the disc here, and then going forward while your right arm is going back. And that helps you to get that shoulder up into the locked position. And I call this the arm differential. The arm's going in different directions, and I'm going to jump in and explain that in another video because it's super important. But essentially, we're going to have to change our timing. This arm coming back and then down while this arm is still back or going back in order to help get that shoulder into the locked position. And some of the best people to look at for arm differential, Paul McBeth is probably the best one to see how he does it and look at the timing. Okay, one other point that I want to make about this is how much you can cross your arms in the two positions. Because when I was just using my shoulder in the free position and trying to copy pros as they brought their left arm in, I was never able to achieve anything close to what the pros were doing. Okay? So when I bring it in, it still just looked about like this, with about 9 inches of space between my arms, between my shoulders. But when you put your shoulder in the locked position, you can bring them, you can cross them much more, as you can see. So when you see Paul McBeth throw, like, how in the world does he do that? How he must be super flexible. He is. But by doing this, you can see how it becomes possible to get your arms to cross as much as he is doing it. Now, a question remains is, how can you develop this? How can you add it into your throw? And let me tell you how I learned about this or discovered it. And that will give you a way to practice it, to drill it. Okay. So when I first started, I wanted to be able to throw every type of shot, from an extreme hyzer angle to an extreme anhyzer angle. And I paid attention to how they were different. And my extreme anhyzer throws were extremely different from my flat throws. And so I paid careful attention to how they were different. I noticed that structurally they were different. They felt different. The muscles that I engaged were different. The structures felt different. When I was throwing flat, I had my arm in the free position, and I had very little power there, and it was always really frustrating. But when I threw that extreme anhyzer throw, I just had a ton of power. So I started thinking about, well, what if I was to just slowly lower that down using that same structure, that same form? Okay, and it started to work, and I paid attention to it and came to this final conclusion that there are these two different positions that we can put our shoulders in, and they have different results. And so that is one way to practice, because if you try to do an extreme anhyzer throw with your shoulder in the free position, it's not going to work. because, well, give it a try and see, but it's just not going to work because you've got to get it up high. So what people tend to do is to go something like this when they try to do it in the free position. So in order to do that extreme anhyzer, you've got to get this shoulder, you've got to get this elbow coming up past the shoulder. Okay, and when you do that, you are getting that shoulder into the locked position. See, it's in the locked position right there. So if you do an extreme anhyzer with the elbow coming up over the shoulder, you put it into that position naturally. So that's a way that you can get a feel for it. Okay, so you can practice that until you get that feel down, and then you can work on bringing down the angle slowly over time using the same feel. And it looks like this when you throw that extreme anhyzer. Let me do one more. All right, so there is a drill that you can use to work on it. You can also manually get it in that position and feel it, and you can throw straight from there if you want to. Or you can work on getting into that position naturally as well.